I'm a concierge at a Sydney hotel, and last month an American couple asked if they could check in early because they'd had such an exhausting flight. I looked at their booking, saw they'd arrived at 6 a.m. on a 10-hour flight from LA, and said what any reasonable person would say. Yeah, that's not actually a long flight, mate. We've got your room ready at 2. The wife's face went pale. The husband asked to speak to my manager. When my manager arrived, he said the same thing I did, because that's not a long flight and their room genuinely wasn't ready. They posted a review calling us the rudest hotel staff in the Southern Hemisphere. My cousin works at Melbourne Airport, and she watched an American businessman stop mid-stride when a customs officer said, "Day mate, chuck your bag on the scanner for us." The businessman looked around confused, clearly waiting for someone to translate the perfectly normal English sentence he'd just heard. When my cousin pointed at the X-ray machine, he said, "Oh, you mean place my luggage on the conveyor belt?" Then he spent 5 minutes asking if Australian customs agents received adequate training in professional communication standard. My best mate manages a restaurant in Brisbane, and he had an American family come in for Sunday lunch. When he brought them the menus, the dad asked what he'd recommend, and my mate said, "Everything's decent, can't really go wrong." The dad smiled and said, "Wow, you must really love this place." My mate looked at him and replied, "I mean, it's fine, pays the bills." The entire family went quiet. Later the mum asked to speak with him privately and asked if he was going through something difficult at home because his energy seemed very negative. I work at a university in Canberra, and during orientation week an American exchange student introduced herself to the group by listing every scholarship she'd won, every award she'd received, and every leadership position she'd held back home. When she finished, there was complete silence. She asked if anyone had questions, and one of the local students said, "Yeah mate, did you want us to give you a medal or something?" She filed a complaint with Student Services about bullying. The coordinator had to explain that Australians generally don't appreciate people who big note themselves. My brother runs a mechanic shop in Perth, and last year an American guy brought in his rental car because the engine light was on. My brother checked it, found nothing wrong, and said, "Yeah mate, that light's just on for no reason sometimes, you're all good." The American stared at him and said, "But shouldn't you run a full diagnostic?" My brother replied, "I just did, there's nothing wrong with it." The guy insisted on paying for a comprehensive check. My brother charged him $200, ran the exact same tests, and told him the exact same thing. The American left a 5-star review praising the shop's thoroughness. I'm a GP in Adelaide, and I had an American patient come in complaining of a headache. After examining her, I said, "You're fine, just dehydrated, drink more water." She looked genuinely hurt and asked if I was sure I didn't want to order any tests. I said, "No, you just need water." She asked if maybe it could be something more serious, and I told her it definitely wasn't, she just needed to drink water. She left and switched to a different doctor who apparently told her the exact same thing but said it more compassionately. The other doctor charged her 3 times as much for the consultation. My dad's a bank manager in Hobart, and an American couple came in to open a business account. When they finished the paperwork, my dad said, "Right, you're all sorted, should be active in 2 days." The husband said, "Thank you so much for your time, we really appreciate you going above and beyond for us." My dad looked confused and said, "I just did my job, mate." The wife jumped in with, "We just mean you've been so helpful." My dad replied, "I filled out a form, not really that helpful." They complained to head office that he was dismissive of their gratitude. Head office told them that's just how Australians talk. I work at a car rental place in Darwin, and an American woman asked what the best route to Kakadu was. I told her to take the Arnhem Highway straight through. She asked if there were any scenic alternatives, and I said, "Not really, it's pretty much just the one main road." She asked if I was absolutely certain there wasn't a more picturesque option, and I said, "Yeah, I'm certain, it's literally just the one highway." She then asked if I could recommend any hidden gems along the way. I told her it was mostly just bush and the occasional servo. She left a comment card saying I lacked enthusiasm for promoting local tourism. My sister teaches high school in Newcastle, and she had an American exchange teacher join the staff. During her first week, the American teacher kept introducing herself to students by listing her degrees, her years of experience, and her teaching philosophy. My sister pulled her aside and said, "Mate, you don't need to do all that, they just want to know your name." The American teacher said that in the States it was important to establish credibility. My sister replied, "Yeah, but here it just makes you sound like a wanker." The American teacher asked if there was a handbook on Australian workplace communication. My sister said, "Yeah, just be normal." I'm a lifeguard at Bondi Beach, and an American bloke came up to me asking if the water was safe. I said, "Yeah, it's fine, just swim between the flags." He asked what the flags meant, and I told him they mark the safe swimming area. He then asked if I could guarantee there were no sharks. I said, "No mate, it's the ocean, there might be sharks." He looked horrified and said, "So you're telling me it's not safe?" I replied, "No, I said swim between the flags and you'll be fine." He demanded to know the exact percentage chance of a shark encounter. I told him I wasn't a mathematician, I was a lifeguard, and if he was that worried he should just stay on the beach. He filed a complaint saying I failed to provide adequate safety information. My cousin works at a gym in Townsville, and an American woman signed up for a membership. During her first session, she asked the trainer for feedback on her form. The trainer watched her do a few reps and said, "Yeah, that's all right." She stopped and said, "Just all right? What can I improve?" He replied, "Nothing really, you're doing it fine." She pressed him and said she wanted honest, constructive criticism. He said, "I am being honest, your form's fine." She got frustrated and said, "In America, trainers help you reach your full potential." He replied, "Yeah, and I'm telling you you're already doing it right, what more do you want?" She cancelled her membership and wrote a review saying Australian fitness professionals lack ambition. I'm a barista in Melbourne and an American guy ordered a flat white. When I handed it to him, he took a sip and said, "Oh wow, this is incredible. You must have trained extensively." I shrugged and said, "Not really, just made a coffee." He looked confused and said, "But the flavor profile is so complex." I replied, "It's just coffee and milk, mate." He stood there for a moment, then asked if I could share my technique. I said, "You just pour the milk in, that's literally it." He left me a $20 tip. I chased him down the street to give it back, because we don't do that here, and he thought I was returning it because it wasn't enough. My uncle owns a pub in Cairns, and last month an American woman ordered the fish and chip. When he brought it out, she said, "This looks amazing." He said, "Yeah, it's all right." She paused and asked, "Just all right?" He replied, "I mean it's fish and chips, not exactly rocket science." She looked disappointed and said, "I guess I was expecting you to be more excited about your menu." He said, "Why would I be excited about fish and chips? You've had fish and chips before, haven't you?" She posted online that Australian restaurants suffer from low staff morale. I wait tables at a restaurant in the Gold Coast, and an American couple kept thanking me every single time I did anything. I brought them water, they thanked me profusely. I brought them menus, they thanked me profusely. I brought them their meals, they thanked me profusely. After the fourth round of elaborate thank yous, I said, "You can just relax, mate. This is literally my job." The husband said, "We're just trying to be polite." I replied, "I know, but you don't need to thank me for doing the thing I'm paid to do." They left a review saying I was hostile to positive feedback. My girlfriend works at a farmer's market in Byron Bay, and an American tourist asked if the mangoes were locally sourced. She said, "Yeah, they're from up the road." The tourist asked which farm specifically, and my girlfriend said, "I dunno, some farm up the road." The tourist seemed disappointed and asked if she could provide more details about the growing process. My girlfriend replied, "They grew in the ground, we picked them, now they're here." The tourist asked if that information was available on a card or sign somewhere. My girlfriend said, "Why would we need a sign to tell you mangoes grow in the ground?" The tourist bought her mangoes somewhere else. I'm a line cook in Fremantle, and an American food blogger came in and asked if our burgers were artisanal. I said, "They're just burgers, mate." She asked what made them special, and I said, "Nothing really, they're fine." She pressed further and asked about our secret ingredient. I replied, "Meat, cheese, lettuce, tomato, same as every other burger on the planet." She asked if we used any unique preparation methods, and I said, "Yeah, we cook them." She wrote an article about how Australian chefs lack passion for their craft. We got more customers after that article because locals thought it was funny. My mate runs a bakery in Wollongong, and an American couple came in asking for recommendations. He pointed at the meat pies and said, "Those are popular." The husband asked why they were popular, and my mate said, "Because people buy them." The wife asked if there was a signature recipe passed down through generations. My mate replied, "Nah, we just follow the recipe on the packet." The husband looked disappointed and said, "So there's no story behind them?" My mate said, "Yeah, the story is people get hungry, we make pies, they buy them." They asked if he could at least tell them what made his bakery different from others. He said, "We're on this street instead of another street." They left without buying anything. I work at a wine bar in Margaret River, and an American woman asked me to describe the wine she'd ordered. I said, "It's red, it's wine, it tastes like wine." She laughed thinking I was joking and said, "No really, what are the tasting notes?" I replied, "I don't know mate, it's just red wine." She asked if I could at least tell her about the vineyard. I said, "It's in Margaret River, they grow grapes, they make wine." She said, "You're really not selling this." I replied, "You already ordered it, what do you want me to sell you?" She asked to speak with the sommelier. I told her we don't have a sommelier. She asked who chooses the wines then. I said, "The boss buys whatever's on special." She switched to beer. I'm a train conductor in Sydney, and an American tourist asked how long it would take to get to Melbourne. I said, "About 10 hours by train." He looked shocked and said, "That's it?" I replied, "No mate, that's 10 hours, that's a long time." He said, "Well, in America we drive that far just to see family." I said, "Good for you, this isn't America." He asked if I could recommend a faster route, and I said, "You could fly, takes about an hour." He said that seemed too short to really appreciate the landscape. I told him the landscape between Sydney and Melbourne is mostly just trees and farmland. He insisted on taking the train to experience authentic Australia. 5 hours in he came to find me and asked if we were nearly there yet. My dad's a bus driver in Alice Springs, and he had an American couple ask if he could drop them off at Uluru after his town route. He said, "Mate, that's about 450 kilometers away." The husband said, "Oh, that's only like 300 miles, couldn't you just swing by?" My dad laughed and said, "No, I couldn't just swing by, that's a 5-hour drive." The wife said they'd be happy to wait on the bus while he made the detour. My dad said, "This is a town bus, it goes around town, not to Uluru." They asked if there was an express service. He said, "Yeah, it's called hire a car." They reported him for being unhelpful. I work at a tourist information center in Port Douglas, and an American woman asked how long it would take to drive to Brisbane for lunch. I said, "About 16 hours. She laughed and said, "No, seriously, how long?" I said, "Seriously, about 16 hours. Brisbane's 1,500 kilometers away." She looked at a map and said, "But it's like 3 inches on this map." I replied, "Yeah, and Australia's massive. 3 inches here is not 3 inches in America." She asked if there was a faster coastal route. I said, no, because the coast is the route, and it's still 1,600 kilometers. She left saying Australian tourism materials were misleading about distances. My mate works for a taxi company in Broome, and he picked up an American couple from the airport. They asked him to take them to Perth for a business meeting. He said, Perth's 2,000 kilometers away, mate. The husband said, yes, we know, we have a meeting at 4. My mate said, it's noon now, you're not making a 4 o'clock meeting. The husband insisted they'd left plenty of time and showed him a map on his phone where Perth looked quite close. My mate zoomed out on the map and said, see that massive amount of empty space? That's why you're not making your meeting. They missed their meeting and blamed Australian infrastructure. I'm a flight attendant with Qantas, and an American passenger asked if we'd be landing soon because she'd been on the plane for 2 hours. I said, we've got another 9 hours to go to LA. She looked panicked and said, 9 more hours? That's impossible, I've already watched a movie. I replied, yeah, that's how flights work, they take time. She said in America domestic flights are usually under 4 hours. I said, this isn't a domestic flight, we're flying across the Pacific Ocean. She spent the next 9 hours complaining that Australian geography made international travel unnecessarily difficult. When we landed, she asked if I could recommend a more direct route for next time. I said, yes, swim. I drive a tourist coach in Tasmania, and an American bloke asked if we'd see any kangaroos on the tour. I said, maybe, they're wild animals, can't guarantee anything. He said, but surely you know where they usually hang out? I replied, yeah, in the bush, which is everywhere. He asked if I could take the route with the highest probability of kangaroo sightings. I said, mate, I'm driving the same route I always drive. If we see kangaroos, we see them. If we don't, we don't. He said, in America, tour guides go the extra mile to ensure customer satisfaction. I replied, in Australia, tour guides drive the route they're meant to drive, and animals show up or they don't. We saw 3 kangaroos. He said it wasn't enough and wanted a partial refund. My sister works at a pharmacy in Geelong, and an American woman came in asking for medication. My sister asked if she had a prescription, and the woman said no, but she gets it over the counter in America. My sister said, well, you can't get it over the counter here. The woman asked why not, and my sister said, because it's prescription only in Australia. The woman argued that it wasn't a strong medication and should be available without a prescription. My sister replied, I don't make the rules, I just follow them. The woman asked if she could speak to someone who did make the rules. My sister said, yeah, Parliament, good luck with that. The woman demanded to know why Australia had such backwards pharmaceutical regulations. My sister said, probably so people don't just wander in and buy whatever they feel like. The woman left saying Australian healthcare was deliberately obstructive. My best mate's a real estate agent in Brisbane, and he showed an American couple through a house last week. After the tour, the husband said, you didn't mention any of the home's unique selling points. My mate said, it's a house, it's got walls and a roof. The wife asked about the neighborhood's character, and my mate replied, it's fine, bit quiet, normal houses and normal people. The husband said, but what makes this property stand out? My mate looked around and said, it's near a bus stop, I guess. They told him they'd never encountered a real estate agent who cared so little about making a sale. He told them he cared about the sale fine, but he wasn't going to pretend a regular house in a regular suburb was anything other than a regular house in a regular suburb. They bought it anyway because it was the only honest assessment they'd heard all week. Sometimes brutal honesty is exactly what people need, they just don't realize it until they're already offended. Welcome to Australia, mate, where sugarcoating is for cakes, not conversations.